Okay, so welcome to today's seminar, which is going to be on law and African scholars in the UK. We have the pleasure to have with us Philip Oamen, who is going to lead the talk. And then also we have Augustine Farinola, who is going to give us a preamble on this topic. And before we start, I'd just like to present the network for those who are joining us for the first time. So I'm just going to share my screen. Oh, sorry, it's not that. Right, so this is the network. The network started as University of Birmingham African Researcher Network, but we welcome people from all over the world who have an interest in Africa. And so anyone can join us. This is the new website that we are building. As you can see, our objectives is to create a collaboration among African, but also people who are of African descent or anyone interested in Africa. So you can join us. There are similar organizations everywhere in the UK, but you can join us here. And there's different ways you can contact us. For example, if you go here, we are on Facebook. If you click, for example, that's LinkedIn. So you can join us here on LinkedIn, or you can also join us on Facebook, or even WhatsApp if you prefer. Okay. And yeah, that's just a small introduction about who we are and what we do. Without any further ado, I am going to pass. Yes, this website. It's under construction, but I'm just showing you ahead. But we've been using this website before on the Commons. So we're just moving to the new website. But if you want to register with us, you can just click here, register, click here, and then you can just fill in this form to register. And we have also, you can also have access to our past events. Like the last one we had was on positionality. So you can access them, and you can just click, and then you can listen to what we did previously. Yeah. Okay, so I am going to, I've already introduced Augustine Farinola, and I'm going to ask him to just give us a brief preamble on what's going to be the topic for today's session. Yeah, please, Farinola, when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Kasongo. Thank you so much, our guest speaker for today. And in having today's session, which is one of the sessions we have been having, as Mukile have said, it's a little bit out of concern for what is currently going on and showing people the direction on how to move forward and how to resolve issues in the way that it should be. And as we know that most researchers, that we have about 40 who are members of this network, registered members of this network, they have showed their concern that many people hear about things of racism or issues concerning police brutality and issues that are affecting their studies or affecting their work experience in the UK. And most times it's like this are the narratives they're getting, and it creates some elements of fear. And most of this narrative always has a follow-up, which always talk about the people who actually initiate or carry out those acts are not facing any consequences. And most people are like, are they going to stand by it? Are they just going to endure? So the thing is this, whether someone is an international student or visiting scholar or staff, or it's a common experience that narratives talking about Black and ethnic minority facing more police brutality or facing issues around immigration or housing, has raised some concerns, and that is what we think we should engage with. During the lockdown, we have the case of police arresting, let's say, a black person that raised a kind of a controversial discussion, whether black people are not obeying the law, or whether they are not conforming, or whether they are being targeted. And I would just say, when we look at this clip, we can just use it to reflect on the discussion that we need to take place.
If I was white and I came to approach the police in that same situation when I was going to support a young person, would I have been treated in that way? The answer is no.
For Kasai Rahal, it really is black and white.
I believe that they criminalized me as soon as they seen me, they profiled me. I stepped out of the vehicle and locked my car, and there they were. I was wearing my forefront t-shirt. I wasn't wearing a suit and tie, and I don't want to go into respectability politics.
The 22-year-old is head of community support at a charity partly funded by the London Mayor. Mr. Rahul works on the Graham Park estate, described as one of the most neglected in London. On a Sunday afternoon in April, he was called to act as an appropriate adult by a group of 3 young people. They'd been visiting a friend's grave at the cemetery when one was arrested on suspicion of possessing cannabis, which he denied.
I told them who I was, my lanyard was clearly visible, and I told them my purpose of being there.
Despite identifying himself as a key worker, Mr. Rahul says he was arrested when he questioned why the police needed to see his driving license. Why didn't you just give the police your details? Wouldn't have that been easier and de-escalated the whole situation?
I wasn't rude, I wasn't never raising my voice, I was being calm. My issue wasn't compliant, my issue was that I felt as if these police officers were not taking me seriously as a professional. And by virtue of me working with a group of criminalized young black boys, I myself as a youth worker, just by being in proximity to them and supporting them, I'm also criminalized in that process.
He was then issued with a fixed penalty notice for breaking lockdown rules. The date, April 12th. If that seems familiar, it was the very same date that Dominic Cummings took his trip to Barnard Castle to test his eyesight. Mr. Cummings faced no police action. The campaign group Liberty Investigates has obtained new figures shared with Channel 4 News that show these fines were disproportionately issued to people from black communities. Police forces could use their discretion when it came to issuing these fines, and these new figures suggest that most forces were 2 to 3 times more likely to believe that the behaviour of a black or minority ethnic person deserved a fine compared to the behaviour of a white person.
And this has been the question that comes to our mind, that, is this thing like a kind of a target of black people, or is they're just coincidence? And we know that there have been issues that they may not be carrying guns in this part of the country, that the police officers, but people are still complaining with regards to the use of leather force and promises with regards to training. But the question we have today, as we have a legal professional, is what do we do in this kind of situation? How do we, when we find ourselves facing these challenges, and do we need to still harbor fears that because you're black, or your color, or being an ethnic minority has already put you in a situation that you can be considered maybe a criminal, or you can be checked? And these are some of the questions today that we have in mind to table to our legal expert. We also have the issues that people have raised with regards to the accommodation and housing issue. One of our members talked about being forced to pay for an unused accommodation during the lockdown, and because he has to abandon the lodge. And the question is, what are you going to do in this kind of situation? Do you have some legal backings? And then we have another case of someone talking about the roommates having symptoms, or the people he shares an apartment with showing symptoms of COVID-19. And he left the place, and he's talking about collecting his money, and the landlord refused to. So we talk about what are the legal backings surrounding that. And when we talk about the issue of reforms, which some members have shared that they find it hard, even if you clean their house, even if you make all preparation, even if you do whatever that is needed to be done so that you can get your total refund. They don't get anything with regards to this. And with regards to immigration, concern has been raised with regards to question of overstaying, and overstaying that could be as a result of factors that are beyond you. And we know that the immigration systems in the UK give credit to international students that they always leave on time. But the circumstances we have to face now has made it a little bit challenging to leave. And new laws that has also been made. What are the imports from those laws, and how do we gain from that? These are questions that has been put forward by our members. And the challenges some people are facing with the question of reformation of laws, which has to do with immigration. So, and the idea of detentions all across the UK, having more than 10 detentions and holding people down once you have found that you are without, you have overstayed, or your immigration passport is not valid any longer. And then a lot of cases that it affects a lot of students, and some people talking about we don't have a genuine case of one person or two person who has tabled that my brother or sister, but some people talk about some of the challenges, and we know the media has projected the fact that some of those detention centers have the law which has to do with indefinite retention, and these places are not even good place. Let's look at this particular footage of Armand Swart detention center. This was secretly videoed this year and sent on social media. And the issue that comes to mind is when we know that majority of people that comes to study in the UK, whether for their masters and whatever, try to look for opportunity and to stay behind. And we have instances of most of them being victims of this. These are questions that people are asking, that what do you do? What do you do so that your situation will not be like that of Mubenga or other places, that the other people that have also reported instances of this sort of discrimination or marginalization or experience that are peculiar to them as immigrants, as students, as staff, as people who have come to work in the UK and other European or even in America or other parts of the world. So these are the concerns that informed the discussion we have today with our legal expert. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Augustine, for this introduction. So just to summarize what he said, Augustine has raised very important questions when it comes to the life of international students, especially Black and ethnic minorities. And we've been shown the videos where we understand that Black and ethnic minorities people are more likely to be arrested, to be detained for similar violations, you know, but for some reason they get arrested more, and also the issue of detention, you know, that can affect them. So that was very insightful. And so just before we move to the talk that we're going to have now, I'm just going to introduce our guest speaker today. As you can see in the picture, it's Mr. Philip Oamen. He is currently a final year doctoral researcher at the University of Birmingham in the law school. Until June 2020, Philip was a teaching associate at the law school at Birmingham University, where he's been teaching law and of contract and law of banking and financial services. At the moment, he's a visiting lecturer at Birmingham City University, where he works in a law school as well, and he teaches the law of contract also. And Philip is also an associate fellow of the UK Higher Education Academy, and his research interests lie in global social justice and multilateralism. Okay, so without any further ado, I'm just going to give the floor to Mr. Oamen, who is going to talk to us today about policing and immigrants in the UK context. When you're ready?
Hi everyone. I'm happy to be here, and as already been said, my name is Philip Oamen. Sorry, just a minute. Hello, please, can you see my slide?
Yes, we can see it, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and it is my first time here. I know my friend Austin has been inviting me, but because of my present commitment, I've not been able to attend any of the meetings, but I'm happy to be here today. And I want to appreciate every member of this group for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts with the House. And I believe that at the end of today's talk, we have been empowered with some legal tips that will help us to navigate our stay here in Birmingham and across the UK. Now, the topic given to me is the law and African scholars in the diaspora. So in the course of today's lecture, I will be looking at some rights that accrue to us as human beings and of course as students, with a view to making sure that when we are faced with situations just like the ones already painted, we will be able to assert our rights and deploy necessary legal machinery to protect those rights. Without much ado, a very simple definition of law is that it is an enforceable body of rules governing any society. So the UK, as it stands, has its own rules and regulations that govern our everyday transactions as human beings, as collectives. And the functions of law are many. For example, it gives the government legitimacy. It is the law that determines who is the prime minister, who is the president of Nigeria, who is the prime minister of the UK, and all that. So it has a legitimacy function. And of course, there is also the allocation of power functions. It determines the respective powers of the respective arms of government. Social order. It is the law. It is because of the law that there is no problem of conflict, and where there is a conflict, it is the law that comes in place to resolve it. So talking of social order, enabling you to know what the law says you should do and what the law also entitles you to do. And when somebody infringes your right, what you're supposed to do to seek remedies. Social control, law also serves as a social control. There are some deviants, no matter what happens, no matter what the law says, they will definitely do something contrary to the law. So it is a mechanism for arresting such deviant elements in the society. Hello.
Oh, hi, Philip. Can you just ask you, please, to because we can't see you. Yeah.
Oh, you can see me
now. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. We can see you now. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So like I will say, it also serves as social justice, and that's what we talk about, economic and social rights, that we'll be looking at very soon, and how that filters or fits into our day-to-day activities as scholars in the UK. And majorly, considering what Austin has just said, conflict resolution functions. What happens in the event that your rights are being tampered with by a person in the UK, whether a government official or a private individual? What are you supposed to do? That is where the law comes in. Conflict resolution. How are you going to deploy the provisions of the law? We will also be looking at that in the course of today's program. As African scholars in the UK, we have several rights. We have what we call civil and political rights, immigration rights, consumer rights, then economic and social rights. And majorly from from the fillers I'm getting from the previous presentation, majority of the concerns raised by members of this forum have to do with civil and political rights, issues related to police, how to handle such issues, but that does not detract from the fact that we also have concerns related to other rights that we'll be looking at. Now, right to life. There are cases where persons have been killed extrajudicially. And of course, the one that usually comes to mind at the present moment is the one in the UK, the judge's case, killed extrajudicially. Now, as a human being, and by virtue of that, as a student, you have a right to life, to live your life to the fullest. Nobody under whatever situation or circumstance has a right to deny you of that right. You are not expected to be denied your right to life because it is protected by both international law and domestic law. I'm talking about the domestic law. If you look at Article 2 of the Human Rights Act of 1998, which governs the UK human rights framework, it provides that you have a right to life. That right, of course, is not absolute. There are situations where it can be taken away from you, talking about where the court expressly states that somebody has been convicted and the person should be deprived of his life. Though here in the UK, death penalty is not, it's not a part of the system, but there is one circumstance where your right to life, especially to live to the fullest, can be deprived. You can be deprived of that right. Of course, it has also been stated that your right to life does not include the right to death. The fact that you have a right to life does not mean that you can take your life. So suicide is not as inclusive of your right to life. If you look at the case I cited, the Britain and United Kingdom, where a lady was ill, she was diseased, and she wanted to end her life. She sought the advice and support of the husband to take her life, but the court said that no, your right to live does not include the right to terminate that particular life. Now, right to freedom from torture, and this is very key as far as the UK students are concerned. Right to freedom from torture. You are not supposed to be tortured in any way whatsoever. You are not expected to be subjected to any form of degrading or inhuman treatment. That is by virtue of Article 3 of the Human Rights Act. And when we talk of torture, it has different grades. We could talk of physical torture, somebody assaulting you, a police officer walking up to you, forcefully taking your phone from you in order to search what is inside the phone. That is degrading. It goes beyond, it goes below your humanity as a person. So those are things you must guide against. And when they happen, what do you do? We are going to look at that even in the course of this presentation. Psychological torture. When you are unnecessarily interrogated by the police officers or by some other persons, maybe because you are Black, try to profile you, try to intimidate you because you are in another mass country. That is psychological interrogation. Interrogation that is not aimed at bringing out justice, not aimed at unraveling any criminality or criminal activities, simply because somebody is Black, because he's Indian, or because he's Asian, you just want to harass that person. So all these fall within your right to be free from torture and degrading treatment. Actual or threatened deportation. A police officer, I've heard of cases here in the UK where they simply walk up to Blacks, try to carry out some investigations or some search without search warrant, and the Black guy resisted it, and they said, "We will deport you." That statement alone is threatening the deportation. It amounts to a breach, a violation of your right to freedom from torture. So you should not keep quiet when such things happen, because once it is threatened and it is not challenged, it will be actualized. So a threat can always lead to the actual act if it is not challenged. Right to liberty and security. You have the right to be free, right to security of your person. Talking of bodily freedom now, your person, what happens to your body, what happens to your family, what happens to their bodies, these are rights rightly protected by Article 5 of the Human Rights Act. Now, if somebody or a police officer decides to detain somebody without lawful reasons, without lawful excuse, you cannot keep quiet and say, "Oh, because I'm not in my country, I don't want, I don't want to be deported," and all that. It has nothing to do with whether or not you are in your country. What matters is that as humanity dictates, for the fact that you are a human being gives you the right to liberty. Like I said before, these are international human rights instruments which have been domesticated by the Human Rights Act of UK. So as it applies in UK, it applies in America, it applies everywhere. You have a right to be secure bodily and otherwise. The right to private and family life, and this fits into what Augustine was talking about as regards tenancy, especially in this COVID-19 period. I've heard of cases where landlords will give instruction to agents to enter into people's apartment to carry out search and all that. That is a clear violation of your right. Why your right is not absolute, why there are situations where the landlord has a right of what we call reasonable view, he has a reasonable view, but such view must be done within the precepts of the law. It must give you sufficient and reasonable notice. It doesn't just come in to view apartment, whether you are about to leave, maybe viewing for somebody else to come in, that is not what can be done without giving you sufficient notice as to when and how the people will come in to view your apartment. And that also fits into your family life, your children, your wife, the way you handle them, the way you live within the confines of the law should not be a question. You should not be subject to any question to any police officer. Of course, that is within the confines of the law. If you are doing something that goes contrary to public law, you will be subject to questions by the relevant authorities. Talking about immigration rights, subject to your visa provisions, you have a right to work as an African scholar here in the UK. If you have your visa and it expressly provides that you should work, nobody should deprive you of the right to work. There are some organizations, they simply do not want to see somebody who is Black or who is Asian to work within their their territory. But if you have a right to work, you are entitled to assert that right. And of course, the right to bring in your dependents. I have a friend who was to bring in the wife and the kids from Nigeria to the UK, but no, because of immigration rules, they were denied of that. But he had to appeal and all that, and at the end of the day, it was granted. So you have a right as a postgraduate student, sometimes as an undergraduate, to bring in your wife and your kids to UK where you school. So that is a right that should be guaranteed. And once it is guaranteed, it should be protected by the relevant authorities. Your right to be to invite family and friends. If you have a mother who wants to visit UK for 6 months, it is a matter of law as a student to apply. Once you apply, it should be granted. If it is not granted for any reason that does not come within the confines of what the immigration law says, you get a lawyer to sort it out, or you appeal against it, and it will be granted. And of course, your children in the UK, by virtue of the fact that you have a visa that enables them to reside with you in the UK, have the right to attend schools of their choice, the right to attend public schools, as it were, provided that they meet the relevant requirements. Then if you are like my brother Augustine, who has given birth here in the UK, so the child has a right to remain right here in the UK, pending when your son, is he a son, she, pending when she travels to Nigeria or some other places. That is the only time she will need a visa to re-enter. For now, nobody has a right to tell that child to go get a visa. He doesn't need a visa to remain in the UK, pending when she goes out of the UK. Talking about specific situations of a student and a university. There are two different schools of thought. Some persons believe that education should not come within the context of consumer protection law, because that will amount to marketization of education. But again, there is another school of thought that says that for the fact that the internationalization of education has even led to that marketization, then the students who have become, who are at the receiving end should, as a matter of law, be protected as a consumer. What I would try to say, your school fee, your tuition fee as an international student is not the same as that of the home students. So for the fact that the school fees or the tuition fee as it were has been internationalized to your own detriment, it means that the legitimate expectations of your studentship should be met as at when due. Because the product, the educational services have been, they are ready to become a commodity, has been commodified, and as a result, the rules should be adhered strictly to, with a view to making sure that you do not become the one at the receiving end. So against that background, we'll be looking at issues related to material information. As a student, you are entitled to information as to your course, as to facilities available. When you are given admission to study a particular course, what your offer says should be clear enough as to what you'll be entitled to. I have a current situation I'm handling of a colleague, not a law student, but a PhD colleague who has been asked to withdraw from the system, but the circumstances surrounding it are things that are not conscionable. They are not what can be protected under the law, because there were no material information provided as at the beginning or commencement of his program. So as a student, you have a right to seek and obtain material information as to when you are to finish, your start date, your completion date, where you are supposed to take your courses if it's a taught program, and your contact hours with your supervisors and all that. So it is a right. It is not a matter of a privilege. And under that too, we're talking about issues related to material things. I'm talking of facilities. For example, if you are not given a laptop or a desktop, as it were, in your university, do you have a right to assert? If it is within the confines of your law, can you assert it? I think yes, depending on the university. If, for example, you are in the University of Birmingham and you do not have your own laptop, a personal laptop, you have a right to use the university system. If they are not available, if they do not have system facilities available, you have a right to demand for them under this right. Now, right to fair terms and conditions. It is not enough for the university to draft out standard terms to say, oh, this and this and this are the things that should apply to a PhD student, for example. Those terms should be reasonable. Fairness of terms is very key. There are laws governing terms inserted in the contract, and a student-university relationship is a contract. When such terms are not reasonable, when they are not fair, you can apply under the relevant laws, for example, the Consumer Protection Act of 2015, to assert your right that these terms, though you signed it, it's not every contract that you sign that permanently become binding on you. It's not every contract that you sign that permanently becomes binding on you. There are some terms that the court can set aside by virtue of their not being reasonable. So those are things you look out for. Then as a student too, you are entitled to the material benefit of your inventions. If, for example, you are a science student, you produce something within the university environment with the support of your supervisor, and your supervisor wants to take advantage of the fact that he is up there to kind of expropriate what belongs to you. You have a right to assert that, no, this is my intellectual property, I should be entitled to it. If, for example, you are writing a paper as a PhD student, and yes, you can add your supervisor because he has been supervising your work, you want to carry him along, but it is not a matter of right to him. Your supervisor does not have the right to say he must have his name in every paper you write. That goes against your intellectual property right. So as you proceed in your program, be mindful of who is your co-author. And if your supervisor must be part of your co-author, which is quite okay, and you know that the bulk of the work was done by you, almost 90% was done by you, why not become the first author? Do not be, as a student, we should not always be afraid to say, oh, if I put my supervisor's name as second author, you may feel somehow. But it is your labor, it is your right to ensure that you write your name as the first author. Because if you eventually find yourself in the academic environment as a lecturer, it matters a lot. Whether you are a first author, a second author, there is a stage you will get to in the academic environment, it becomes an issue. Issues of independence of research. If you are always writing and your supervisor is always first author, it will be assumed that you were carried along by the supervisor, whereas it is supposed to be the other way around. So you do not have independence of thought as a PhD or a student or as a scholar. So those are practical things we should always guide against so that we do not get taken advantage of by those up there. Right to know internal conflict resolution within the university. It is your right to know what should happen in the event that a supervisor goes against your contract with the university. if at the end of the day, a supervisor who has ever been supportive suddenly changes in attitude, everything you write becomes, nonsense to him and all that. Is there any way you are supposed to seek redress? These are issues that should be well laid out by the university. They should not be something you have to dig into the archives to sort out. There are things that should be easily made available to every student so that at the end of the day, your consumer protection rights, your consumer rights will be duly protected. Economic and social rights is also another strand of rights. And when we talk of these rights, I must enter a caveat that they are not generally justiciable. They are not rights you easily assert in court. And the reason for that is that the states usually say that they do not have the necessary resources. Scarcity of resources are usually the excuse given by states to weaponize these particular rights. But again, it depends on the jurisdiction. Like in the UK is a party to the International Convention on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, and that makes it mandatory on the states to carry these rights into fruition, into operation. But again, it is not enough to be a party to the convention. It also has to be domesticated. Without domestication of this right, the practical realization of it becomes watery. The right to work, like I said before, is a right protected by this same strand of rights, and not just the right to work, but also the right to work in a just and favorable condition. As a PhD student, if you are working in an environment where you are being intimidated by other persons because of the skin of your color, because of the color of your skin, you have a right to question such regime. Right to an adequate standard of living. Yes, you have a right to food, right to shelter and clothing, both nationally and internationally. This is a right that attracts extraterritorial obligation of states. The UK, being a party to the International Convention, has a duty, an obligation to ensure that those who live within it, within the state, within the UK, and even outside the UK, are well protected in terms of food, shelter, and clothing. So when you see people sleeping rough, rough sleepers in Birmingham City, when you get there, you see people, you begin to wonder, does the government really live within the framework of the law? These are practical issues that have to be taken up by the relevant persons or victims of right. Right to enjoy the highest standard or highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. As a student, you have a right to mental health. Anybody that does anything, for example, the issue of police officers psychologically interrogating you to elicit some questions or answers that do not necessarily lead to anywhere, it is a violation of your mental health. And by virtue of Article 12 of the International Convention of Economic and Social Rights, you can take them up, that it is a violation of your right. The right to take part in cultural life and benefit from protection of your scientific or literary and artistic production. Like I said before, you have a right to copyright, you have a right to patent, you have a right to things that are matters of your intellectual exercise. Nobody should deprive you of those rights. Having said that, we'll have to look at it from a practical perspective. What happens, for example, your landlord evicts you illegally, so because you have not paid rent. You have not paid rent for this month. By the beginning of next month, your landlord comes with police officers and you are evicted. Does the law support that? The fact that you have not paid rent does not activate the landlord's right to automatically evict you. Eviction from your own house is a violation of your right to housing. Of course, you have a right, you have a duty under the contract signed by you to perform your whole part of the bargain by paying your rent as at when due. But even at that, assuming without considering that the landlord has a right to evict you, there are procedural steps to be taken. He has to serve you the statutory notices. He has to tell you the particular time within which to put your house in order before he can exercise this right. If he just wakes up to say, oh, because your rent expires yesterday, and by law, by the wall you signed, you said you must pay on the 1st of every month, but you have not paid, so you are to be evicted. If he does that, you have a right against him, both under criminal law and civil law. You can sue him. He has violated your right to property. He is the owner of the property, but you have a right of possession. For the fact that you are in the house, you have a right over your landlord. So that is why your landlord cannot use a spare key to enter your apartment where you are not available. So it is a violation of possession. Your possessory right overrides his ownership right as far as you are in lawful possession. Talking about the issue raised by Augustine or raised by one of our colleagues as to whether COVID-19 has impacted on your tenancy contract. Well, it is yes and it is no. It is no in the sense that contract enjoys some element of sanctity. When you sign a contract, it is binding on you. There are certain circumstances where such a contract may not proceed to performance. But again, it depends on the circumstances of the case. So the issue is, if I have entered into a contract with a landlord and I have spent 5 months in an apartment, suddenly a pandemic arises, which has now prompted me to leave that country to my country, to Nigeria, for example. For the next 6 months, I have not lived in that apartment. Do I have a duty to continue to pay rent while I am away? I think that is the gist of that question, Austin, right? So the question is, under law of contracts, the primary determining factor will be the document itself. What you signed as at the time you entered into a contract. Did they have any supervening event provision? Does it have any provision as to force majeure, that in the event that a frustrating event happens, this and that will also happen? If it has a suspensory clause, you can activate it to say, oh, this is clause 1. It says that in the event that something that is beyond the power and control of both parties happens, such a thing will lead to a suspension of existing duties and rights. So you can activate such a right. But if it does not happen, if it is not contractually agreed upon, that does not mean you should also not exploit the law. You can also seek the advice of a lawyer to look at it critically to see how equity can come in. It's not all about common law. We have common law remedies. We also have equitable remedies. What does the law really say in this situation? You are no longer in the UK. Why should you pay? Does it make any practical and reasonable sense for somebody who is not away to begin to pay rent over a property he no longer possesses as at the time it happens, especially against the background that he did not leave voluntarily, but he left as a matter of emergency occasioned by the pandemic. So those are issues that you have to seek legal advice on. But like I said, the primary focus is the document. Look at what your contract says, and what it says is what you should primarily look at. And if it enables you to activate some rights, you can do that. If it does not, you look at elsewhere, you look elsewhere to know whether you can activate equitable remedies. Okay, Austin also made mention of somebody living in an apartment where a flatmate has caught the pandemic. Somebody, you live in an apartment, somebody in your apartment has caught COVID-19. As a result of that, you have to leave that place. Are you entitled to have a refund of the rent you have already paid? Well, it is similar to what I have said before. It depends on the terms of the contract. Because to me, the fact that you live in that apartment poses a threat to your health. So that is one thing you have to look at and discuss with your landlord. And I believe that a reasonable landlord will look at it from a reasonable man's point of view, with a view to making sure that both there is a balance of interest, your interest and his interest. But if it does not, if he says, oh, the law did not say I must refund under this provision, well, I'm afraid you may not have a very solid legal ground to seek and obtain such a refund, because except there is a force majeure clause, you cannot say the contract has been frustrated by pandemic, though pandemic on its own is a frustrating event under the law of contracts. On the issue of overstay, immigration law, yes, on a general play, by law, you are not supposed to overstay as a student. If your visa expires by law, you are supposed to vacate, relocate to a place pending when you are able to find yourself back, either by way of tier 2 or some other route. So that is the law. However, well, just to say that whatever I say now is it goes with the usual disclaimer. This is just a general public opinion. If you are in a situation like this, I would seek, if I'm in your position, I would seek legal advice, immigration advice from legal officers, legal experts as it were. So do not take whatever I say as a binding opinion. So if you are in that kind of situation and you find yourself not being able to leave as a result of situation or ground, you should, of course, seek a legal advice. They may be able to advise you on the status of an overstayer. That's what they call it in immigration law. If you're an overstayer, what are the grounds you may explore and exploit, with a view to making sure that you regularize your position at the end of the day. But I will personally not advise anybody to be an overstayer as a legal person. It is not something I will advise somebody to do. So, in summary of everything related to students, we must take to heart the fact that our internationalized status has already placed us in the gray zone, where our non-citizen outside that status, with all the cultural differences and information asymmetry, has rendered our existence here in the UK and elsewhere uncertain. It has placed us in a very vulnerable and depowered, to use the word of Marxism, in situation. So we are originally disadvantaged. When I say originally, now, by virtue of the fact that we are not in our country. That point must not be lost sight of. We're just talking about practical reality. But again, that is how far it goes. The fact that you have been put in a precarious situation by virtue of being an international student should not prevent you from seeking the protection, respect, and fulfillment of your rights. Your rights are not given to you because of your Nigerianness, because of you being a Ghanaian. No, human rights are given as a matter of humanity. Like an author said, if you are living in French, you are not protected because you are in French, but because you are a human being. Your humanity is what drives human rights. The fact that you are in the UK should not deprive you of your original right as a human being. So what are the steps of protecting this right? Especially as it relates to police. When your rights are violated, normally you go to police to protect it. But when they are the ones violating it, what do you do? Now, in terms of release, you have both civil and criminal release. If it is a police officer who harasses you, you can make a report to the appropriate quarters, to the relevant public authorities. But that should not stop you to activate your civil rights. You can sue the establishment, you can sue the police, you can sue the government for violation of your right. That's why you need a lawyer. When your rights are being violated, whether in terms of criminal deprivation of your civil and political rights or your immigration status, seek legal advice. Do not always assume that I will not gain justice. Justice can be obtained from the system when you try. It is disastrous for somebody to always say, well, for the fact that I am not in my country, I have to play safe. You do not have to play safe because you are a human being. You must be able to come out of your comfort zone to assert your right. And in doing that, you may not know the right sources to go to. The first port of call I will always advise is the citizens' advice. You go to them, they will seek, they will put you through as to your rights and as to your obligations related to a particular issue. So always meet with them, citizens' advice. Then for those of us living in Birmingham, there is the Black Lawyers, Black Countries Law, or they call it Black Lawyers Association, as a body of lawyers of Black origin. You can also explore that option. They protect the Blacks in situations that are beyond them when it comes to legal services. Some of them render free services, some of them render subsidized services, depending on the situation on ground. So those are areas one has to explore. So the concept of global social justice places obligation on our host country, which is the UK, to protect our rights extraterritorially. They have an extraterritorial duty to ensure that our rights as human beings are protected. So if they fail to do that, you can take them up by, first of all, exhausting the internal or domestic remedial mechanism. For example, if a university is the one oppressing you or deprive you of your right, you do not just go to court. What you do first is to exhaust their internal mechanism. They have their way of addressing it. That's why when I was talking on consumer protection, I spoke about knowing the mechanism within the university. So when you know the mechanism, you must exhaust it. It is when they fail or neglect to assert and protect your right for you that you begin to look elsewhere by going extra mile, by maybe looking for a lawyer to file papers on your behalf. So while I await questions, I want to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Mr. Oamen. That was very interesting, and I personally learned a lot. And as you said, there are many rights that international students can have in this country. You mentioned civil rights, political rights, consumer rights, and also you mentioned that is the fact that we need to exhaust, first of all, the complaints procedure, whatever you are, university, and every organization tend to have their own internal procedure. You can exhaust that first, and then contact a lawyer. And also, you mentioned something I didn't know, because I live in the Birmingham area. It is a Black Lawyers Association. That's good to know for those who are local or who live in the West Midlands. And it's just always good to know that there are those kind of supports when you need them. So I mean, this session, we want people to share their own experiences, really. So maybe you don't have any question, maybe you just want to share an experience you had with the police. We have a legal expert here on the panel, and you can always ask a question. And I have a question to ask you while we're waiting for other people to ask. It's the psychological interrogation, because I was psychological interrogation. When you were talking about the rights to, was it rights to freedom, and then you mentioned psychological interrogation. I just want to, if you can talk more about that, because I felt before, many times ago, before when I was in this country, when I used to travel, I'll go to Europe and I'll come back to the UK, and it's where I'll be asked many questions and ridiculous questions. I say, I live here. And at the time I was living here like for more than 5 years, but they'll ask me questions as if, and it used to annoy me. I understand that the person is doing their job, but what I want to ask, if you can, maybe what can amount to that psychological interrogation? Because for me, just having listened to what you said, I think I could have taken them to court, because they were subjecting me to such asking me those silly questions, like where do you live? And it's annoying because I've given you my driving license. It's called my name, my address. You can run my and also some of the questions, like obviously I don't live in London, so I don't experience what Black people experience in London, where they get stopped. I never get stopped in this country, just once in my life. But what annoys me is when I was stopped, they ask me, "Are you known by the police?" And I just it's so annoying, because does it mean that you're going to treat me differently if I'm known? You know what I mean? And again, I don't know whether I should say no or yes. So I just want to summarize. So first of all, it's a psychological interrogation, because we are not to be subjected to torture, whether it's physical or mental. So my question to you, my first question is that when I ask you a lot of questions, especially immigration service, at what point does it amount to, can you call it mental torture? At what point? I just want you, if you can discuss that. And secondly, when you are stopped by the police on the streets, like, for example, and then they ask you, are you known by the police? Again, for me, it's very annoying, but again, am I supposed to say yes or no? So thank you. That's my two questions.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think I will prefer to answer all the questions after everybody has spoken. Does anybody have any other question?
No, we're still waiting. Not at the moment. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I should go ahead.
Yeah, I'll put it to you as they're coming.
Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, the issue of psychological torment or torture, as it were, is a matter of circumstance. It depends on the facts and circumstances surrounding a particular case. But as a reasonable person, you apply the reasonable mass point of view, a reasonable mass test. You will know. The person interrogating you will know that this has gone beyond the normal. This is not the routine. They just want to subject you to this simply because of one or two things. For example, because of your race, because of the color of your skin. So when you are going maybe at the airport, immigration, screening and all that, of course, that is what everybody should subject themselves to, subject yourself to it. But when at the end, you see that particular attention is being paid to some persons because of their color, 10 persons are on the queue, they single out 4 out of the 10, say, please come this way. Then another queue, they single another person. You see that these same persons are of the same color. You should know that this has gone beyond mere routine. This amounts to psychological harassment. And if the questions asked are questions that go beyond, they are questions beyond the ordinary. Because they ask you a question of your travel history, yes, you can answer that. But they begin to ask you questions that have to do with, have you ever had anything to do with, terrorists and all that. So those are questions that are very, very debasing. They are questions that degrade you. They make you feel as if you are not one of them, that by virtue of your color, you are not supposed to be where we are traveling to. So it is a matter of facts. The facts of each case will determine whether or not you have been psychologically harassed and tortured. And when it happens, nothing stops you from asserting your rights, even right there, assert your right and tell them that this has gone beyond the routine. This is not what you did to the other fellow. Is it because I am Black? Is it because of the way I speak? Is it because of my accent? So you should be able to tell them that this is not right. And if they go beyond that to do whatever they want to do, you tell them you seek legal representation at that moment. So that is that on the first question. And talking about whether you are known to the police. Okay, let me ask you, are you known to the police?
No, I'm not. No. My CRB is clean, so there's no crime recorded.
Well, whether you are known, I think what they try to...
It's more or less they make assumptions. Maybe because of the skin, they just make assumptions on you.
Assumptions, yes. They do make assumptions. They do make assumptions to just to torture somebody psychologically. But again, when you do not have criminal record, there is no criminal record, you are not an ex-convict, you do not have any spent conviction or spent conviction, and they ask you, are you known to the police? Or, you can seek opinion. So what do you mean? And let them explain. That the one thing about law is that one must not always assume. It's better you get clarification on every single issue, whether in terms of writing, signing document, or in terms of verbal communication. Because one thing I've observed is that some of us, when I meet some of us, I'm sorry to say, some of us Black, we tend to assume that, oh, this is what it means. If somebody says something, like I have also followed a victim, sometimes I assume that this is what this thing means, whereas that is not what that means. If somebody says something and you believe that that is not what you knew that he meant, you should be able to say, please, can I get further clarification? So that you do not put yourself in the tight corner. Because if you say yes, and yes means no, according to your intention, it becomes a problem. It's just like signing a document and they write a particular word, you're not sure of what it means. Simply ask Google, explain everything by yourself and get it internalized before you sign. So it is not good to always assume. But if they ask you a question, do you have criminal record? You answer yes or no. So if you do not, yes. If if you do, yes. If you do not, no. So it depends on the circumstance of each case.
Yeah.
So hard and fast about that.
Thank you. But I think I may like to come in at this point in this discussion. I know that what lawyers effort to do, or lawyers like Barrister Philip, it's more or less at times like repair after damage. Because when the situation is on, it's not like I will call my lawyer for you, or I will, this is against the section 30 something or section 5 of the human rights, whatever. And for me as a person, I wanted to just, maybe you can shed light to how not to allow the issue of claiming my rights or having recourse to some of all this session, a kind of repair after damage.
Sorry, can you say that again?
The question is this, that when some situations that you have given us various scenarios and basic human rights thing that backs them up and constitutional basis for them. And knowing that is when, for instance, there is a police has started interrogating with me and I've responded, I'm known to the police and they feel maybe there was an instance of robbery and probably I'm a suspect. Or for instance, they don't want to search the house for cannabis because they feel that cannabis is smelling within the building and there's a black person here and everyone is pointing, it seems it's coming from this point. And my own is, I can't start saying you can't enter my house. I can't say, oh, I will call my lawyer for you, or it's against section 30 something of the human rights. So the thing is, what is the role, or where do the lawyer comes in all the situations so that it won't be a case of medication after the illness have already gone out of hand, or repair after damage.
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, when you are faced with a situation like that, the first thing you do, that is why that's the essence of this. I think this is the essence of this discussion, really, for you to have basic or working knowledge of your rights, so that if such thing arises, if a situation with police arises, you do not go blank at the feel that, oh, we can exploit the ignorance of this particular person. So, for example, like you said, police officers come into your apartment and they are targeting you, thinking you are the bad boy around there, and they want to search your house. The first thing, they don't enter like that. One thing we should also know is that as it happens in Africa, it also does happen elsewhere. So the issue of planting things to implicate people, it happens everywhere. It's not restricted to Africa. So if somebody does not just enter your apartment without you knowing what the person is carrying in the bag and all that, then at the end of the day, you find out that you are being implicated for what you know nothing about. So when somebody wants to carry out a search in your apartment, you have a right to demand, a pictorial view of the search warrant. You should have access to the search warrant. Where is your search warrant? They will show you. Then in most cases, you also have a right, especially if it is May and May, you have a right to search the person, search the searcher before he goes into your apartment, so that at the end of the day, you know that he's going in there as I wouldn't want to use a blank slate, he's going there blank and then coming back blank, or with whatever implication he has found inside. Because if you do not search him and he goes in there and comes up with something to say that, oh, this thing was found in your apartment, it becomes a problem. So you should always seek that right to say, can I search you, please, before you go in? And they will oblige you so that you search them and go in with them, or you go in with them as they are going, and you must your eyes must be wide open so that you are not implicated. That is for issues on search. But for arrest, assuming you are going, they just, there is a clamp down, they want to arrest you and all that, the same thing applies. You do not just say, until I see my lawyer. First of all, tell them that you have a right to know what you are being arrested for or what you are being questioned for. It is a fundamental right to know the nature of the offense you are being interrogated for. It is key.
Hope that will not be tantamount to resisting arrest.
No, that I'm coming to that. So once you are being confronted by the police or other agencies, what you do is to tell them that you are entitled to know the nature of your arrest, the persons involved, that are persons, maybe persons implicating you. You have a right to see them and interrogate them if you want, or your lawyer can do that. But if they insist that they do not want to tell you until they get to the police station, like it normally happens in Africa and some as you're able here, and they want to drag you along, you do not begin to kind of struggle with them. Do not engage in physical combat with them. That will amount to obstruction of justice. Do not obstruct justice. What you do is to comply with them at that level. But thereafter, what you do is to assert your civil right. You sue them. One, if at the end of the day, it is found that you were not culpable, there was nothing incriminating against you, you sue them for lawful arrest. If the matter has already gone to court before they found out that you were not the person they were looking for, you sue them for malicious prosecution and gain good money. It's a good way of making money. Some lawyers are, that is what they specialize in. Ambulance chasing, they chase people who have problems like that. They tell you, okay, they harass you, we take your matter to court on your behalf. You're not paying us anything, but at the end of the day, if the court grants you compensation, we share it 50-50. Some lawyers, that is what they do here in the UK. And at the end of the day, you smile, your lawyer smiles. But that is what that is one area that some poor people who cannot easily and immediately afford the services of a lawyer can do. That is what they call contingency matters. That's what lawyers call it. So that is it. You have a right to always assert your right. A right to assert. You always assert it, no matter what, no matter who is involved. Tell them that you have a right to search him or her before he or she enters your apartment. You have a right to be informed of the nature of the offense. But if they insist to go against the rudiments of the law, do not use self-help to assert your right, because that would be detrimental to you at the end of the day. Allow them to do whatever they want to do. After that, you can now proceed against them in the civil courts. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks for that. Was very interesting. I just want to, because I don't see any question in the chat. I just bring up just a real case. I'm just going to show this on the screen. It's the UK African Association. So there was this is just about visa refusal. So it's just a short paragraph here, the one in red, starting there, because you mentioned something very interesting about culture differences, and I think that plays a lot in terms of law. Because, but then we living in this globalized planets that we travel a lot, and the reality is both ways. But what I'm showing this because this gentleman, he lives. Do you want me to leave it in red?
Yes, please.
Okay, great. So he lives, because I've seen that a lot with my fellow Africans. So it's just the realities are different. So he lives in a rural village. He gets paid cash. So and although he was able to show his wage slips, to justify that he has an income, even though you can't see that in a bank account. But that's just a different country. There might be different realities, But he was still refused a visa, and I see. I'm asking because in the UK, I think it's called jaywalking. The American they call it jaywalking. In the UK, you see red light, I cross. It's not against the law. Okay. If you go to Germany, it's against the law. It's against the law. If it's red, you must stop as a pedestrian. If you cross, the police sees you, they will arrest you, and it's a crime. Yeah. So, but then when you have tourists, I'm sure the German police can be sometimes flexible, because they know people coming in the country, they might have different realities. So that's my question, because I found it very interesting that very sometimes I know you can't change people's mentality, but I think people in the immigration services, they should consider that, because if I go to Nigeria, there's Nigerian way of doing things, whether it's immigration, whether it's food, whether it is. If you come to the UK, but because we are moving in and out of these countries, we're kind of trying. It's both way. UK people, British people do come to Nigeria, as well. So I will. Maybe I'm just being. It's just kind of a hope, but I'm questioning how people can be more understanding of different realities. That in Nigeria, maybe someone gets paid cash. So when it comes to ask for a visa, and the person just opened a bank account just for the circumstance, obviously they're not going to be money in that bank account. But it's just kind of, you just open it because he's traveling abroad. And then when he apply for a visa, it's going to go rejected. Like this gentleman, they say we don't see sufficient activity. Even though he's showing the immigration service that I get money, but these are my wage slips. So, yes,
now.
Yeah, so I know it's a cultural related question,
yeah.
But I wonder if Ms. Oamen can tell us maybe his own opinion about that, because I think it's really, it can disadvantage that in this case, it's African scholars coming to a conference to the UK, and lecturer, they are very respectable people, so, and just being refused visa. So, and maybe UK or European countries in general, like, can be maybe, it's a question of diversity maybe in their team,
Yeah, I agree with you, Kasongos, and I feel that our barrister here has something to say on that. And there's something that came in that I want to read to go along with what you have tabled before him. It's from Julia Wally. So thank you for this interesting discussion. I'm a student at Birmingham, but work at another academic institution in Scotland, and I have a number of international students. It's very helpful to see the student perspective. At the institution where I work, the staffs are made to feel very concerned about students' attendance monitoring for the UK board agency, and this feels uncomfortable. And if we, staff, must police our students, put students' whereabouts, do you think the university can do more to ensure international students are more aware of their rights in the UK? And as a follow-up to this, I want to ask the barrister Philip, along with that what did the institution put in place, not just for students, also for students who turn to staff, people who are retained to lecture? What did they put in place, and what did they put in place to ensure that some of all these things does not appear as if they are criminals already? Because immigration, to be an immigrant, is not a crime. And it seems it's being treated like that even when you want to rent an apartment and they are scrutinizing everything here and there, or when you are going on a transport, on a movement. So these are some of the things that I think this person has also raised, that how does the structure prevent or do more so that the students will not feel that they are just being policed, or teachers being used to police the students' life.
Thank you. I think, yes, I agree that the universities need to do more for international students to be more aware of their rights. It is very important because, like they said, ignorance is not an excuse in law. And if it is not an excuse for carrying out your duty, it is also not an excuse for you not to assert your right. So the first port of call is for each university, if you ask me, to have a designated unit within their international students team that is solely dedicated to advising students on their rights, whether accommodation rights or immigration rights, any related rights, because it is very important that we as students know our rights. For example, if you look at University of Birmingham, I know that the Guild of Students have been doing some stuff related to students' rights and all that, but it goes beyond that student union body. It should be an institutionalized system within the university where you can easily walk into and ask questions related to your rights. Because when you are empowered by such information, you will know what steps, if any, to to be taken in the event of violation of such rights. So that is my take on the issue. Institutionalized mechanism, decentralized at each university level to protect those students, especially against the background of what I have said before, that our tuition fee has been, internationalized. So if you are paying £15,000, another person is paying £9,000, there should be value for money. There should be value for money. The fact that you pay more gives you some elements to, some elements to demand for rights that some other persons could even let go, especially against the fact that your being an international student has even disadvantaged you in the system already. So if you are not empowered with the existence of your rights will be so attenuated that you no longer know that you even have them in the first place. So that is one thing. And on the issue of contest, yes, I think a good law must always be culture specific. A good law should be a law that has some cultural context in it. But again, the fact that a law does not have some specific context related to cultural differences does not make it a law that should not be obeyed. So we are talking about the ought now. This is how it ought to be. You are the philosopher, Augustine, so you understand what I'm saying. That is what it ought to be. You are the philosopher. A good law should protect the cultural differences of every person. But again, if you look at it in the books, it is there. Virtually every university in the UK will tell you that we are promoting equality, we are promoting cultural differences and diversity. They even have programs for it, courses that you can go, to audit with a view to knowing how diversity at the academic environment works. But in practice, does it work out? How practical is it? Do they give international students the opportunity to assert their rights? Do they have equal opportunities? After your PhD, what chances do you have to work vis-a-vis somebody who is already in the system? I mean, somebody who is white, black and white, what is the employment rate ratio? Those are practical issues that kind of becloud the so-called diversity drive by different universities. So it is there in the law, but the practical application and implementation is something that goes beyond below expectation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Mr. That was very, very interesting indeed, and I think everyone has got something to take away from today's from today's discussion, and about UK laws and how we can assert our rights as industrial students, how we can find out about what we have to do if we have to deal with the immigration, with the police and housing. And so we really appreciate your time and that you took to today's Saturday. You could have been somewhere else, but you were here with us. So we thank you for that. And we really, really appreciate it. We hope to see you in some other events as well that we do. So just before we go, and I think Augustine needs to put me yeah, great, thank you. So I'm just going to show you the slide of our next event. So it will be on, I'm just gonna open it. Right, so. Great, so this is the next event that we're going to have will be on, we will be having 3 panelists, and the topic will be on science. As you can see, we have Dr. Arabasi and Zagir. We also have Khadija. They're all in science. So we hope that you'll be able to be there. And yeah, and we thank you so much again for today. Thanks a lot, Mr. Orman, for being with us today, and hope to see you. And we wish you all the best in your last year of PhD. I know I'm not sure if it's the hardest one, but I'm just finishing my my second year, moving to the third one. So okay, so we hope that we wish you all the best in your last PhD year, and also success to your job hunting and all of that. We know it's not easy, but God willing, we all gonna get there. So thanks so much for coming in today's event and for sharing with us your thought and opinion. And we have our website. Just before I finish, so you can also check. If you are not registered, you can always register. So you can always come here. It's a Humanity Commons. You can click here and register. And current members are here, so you can see.
You're not sharing the website. We can't see it.
Oh, you can't see it. Okay. Oh, sorry. I just had to move a screen. Sorry. So this is the website. So if you want to register, you can come here. And our current members are here, so you can see it's different. We are all different. People are doing engineering, literature, law. It is many different people here in the network. So, and the network keeps growing. It's growing. It's growing. It's growing. So we have to. We keep getting more members. So if you are not in this list, you can always register by clicking here, or you can also join us by clicking. WhatsApp group, LinkedIn. So feel free to join us. And yes, so yeah, I wish you have a nice weekend, and thank you so much for coming, and thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.